Hello everyone, and welcome to Modernizing Old Hymns number 11. Last time we were playing a song in the key of C, and it's got the three regular chords for the key of C, C, G, and F. And when we got to the third last line here, the hymnal threw in a D chord all of a sudden. Why is that? Also, in the notes below the lesson, I gave you a hymn in the key of D to try. And the way it's printed here, it has the three chords that are normal for the key of D, D, A, and G. I also marked a spot here with an asterisk and said, try throwing an E chord in there. The hymnal, in fact, does throw an E chord in there. First of all, I'll play the line as it's printed here now. I know that my Redeemer lives. Sounds okay, but now I'll play that E chord in there where the asterisk is. I know that my sounds a little more familiar to you. Let me just put in as a parenthesis here, if you're playing this hymn the way the hymnal does, the triple chord change over here, that A, you actually hit on the upstroke. He lives my ever living head. Let me explain what happened in these two songs. First of all, I'm going to mention that the fourth chord I'm going to show you today is not as regular as these other three chords I've shown you so far. The composer may go off in the key I'm going to show you. He may go off in a different key. He may go from major to minor. But most likely, as you're playing along in the hymnal and you're trying to find those three chords and this one sounds just a little bit funny, then chances are the composer went to this fourth chord. Here's what happened. In the key of C, we've got our three chords, of course, G, 7th, and F, and he went off in the key of the second chord. He went off into the key of G and added a D 7th. Okay, notice the C is the same for both scales. That's what makes this chord change so subtle. Okay, and if we're in the key of G, the composer may go off into the key of D and add the A 7th chord. And in the key of D, as we did in hymn number 200, I Know My Redeemer Lives, he went off into the key of A and added an E or E 7th chord. Something nifty that's happening here is when we go from C into the key of G and add that D 7th chord, we're adding one sharp for just a short time. Same thing too if we're in the key of G and we go off into the key of D, another sharp gets added. And if you're playing this, especially if you want to try to learn by ear, you all of a sudden hear kind of a lift in the song because it got an extra sharp for just a short time. I also put down the key of F here. It goes off into the key of C to get that fourth chord, G, and it loses its flat for a little while, and that's the same as adding a sharp, right? For an example here, let me show you hymn number 16 in the Lutheran hymnal, Blessed Jesus at Thy Word. And you'll see it's in the key of G. For the most part, the two chords are just G and D. It's almost a two-chord song. It does throw in a C very close to the end there. But as you're playing along here, all of a sudden, one line adds an A chord to it. Now, how do I know that? You don't really have to read music very well to see this. But if you look at the harmony in your Lutheran hymnal, if you look at the tenor part and the alto part, all of a sudden you'll see a sharp there that you normally don't find in that scale. And chances are when you see something like that, you're seeing the key change I just described to you. This song is in the key of G, the second chord is D, and it's going off into the key of D for just one line and adding an A or an A7th chord. Let me play a couple lines for you here. I'll start at the second line. Let our hearts and souls be stirred, because the first and second lines are the same. We're playing in the key of G here. Let our hearts and souls be stirred, now to seek and love and fear thee. Now we're going to go off in the key of D for a little while here. By thy teaching sweet and holy, and back to the key of G again. Drawn from earth to love thee solely. Now, you don't have to use the key change I just showed you. If we go and just use the three chords, E belongs to the C chord, right? I'll play a C here this time instead. And A belongs to the D chord. And it'll sound like this. By thy teaching sweet and holy. It's not a whole lot different, is it? Maybe just a little bit less of that lift to it, a little less sparkle. Why change keys like this in a song? Well, songs, just like stories, can have a climax to them. And that kind of makes the climax of the melody right here, too. Could it possibly be somebody showing off what they know about music? Yeah, I think we see some of that in the hymnal, too. But what's the most important part of a hymn? It's the words, right? Okay. Look at these words here. By thy teaching, sweet and holy. Teachings, God's word is holy. And as I look at the rest of the verse here, I believe these are probably the most important words of the song. And so going off into a different key subtly like this, and emphasizes those words. That's the most important reason for throwing in a key change like this. Now let's look at hymn number 465 in the Lutheran hymnal. Christ is our cornerstone. This one's in the key of C. And as we're playing along here, this one isn't as subtle as the key change, isn't as subtle as we've seen in the hymn so far. It actually adds an accidental in the melody line itself. So this time, well, what's happening here, first of all? We're in the key of C. We've got our three chords, C, G, and F, and we'll have to add a D this time. It just can't be helped. It goes from a key that has no sharps in it to a key that has one sharp in it. That is the key of G. So just this one line again is going to be in the key of G. let me play along here and listen to when we get to the words with his true saints alone. You'll hear that key change all of a sudden, kind of a lift all of a sudden. Christ is our cornerstone, on him alone we build. With his true saints here comes alone, the courts of heaven are filled. We go back to the key of C. On his great love, our hopes we place of present grace and joys above. Okay, this is like my featured song for the day here, so we'll apply some of our strumming and finger picking patterns to it. The last line is a little bit tricky. It just goes up the sixth scale, starting on C, and adds one extra note at the top, a D at the top. And let me hold this up. Hopefully you can see my fingering a little better. Okay, now we'll have to do, as we're going up the scale there and changing chords, it's going to be a little bit tricky. It starts on the C note, and then to the G chord. Fourth string is the note there, and I can add the E with my index finger here. And then the F with my little finger. Then we go to the F chord. Okay, to play the B, I'm going to have to move my index finger over so I can get that open second string, then put it back on again to play the C. And I can add the D with my little finger, and then back to the C again. Now remember, depending on which style you're using, you may be able to play just some of the strings, not have to put all your fingers down. Another tricky part we're going to have is when we get to that first F sharp. All right, it is possible to play the D chord and catch that F sharp with your little finger. Okay. If you're really quick, you might, and you can't make the stretch, just F sharp real quick followed by the chord. Often when I'm strumming up to the note, I can get by with just one finger there, actually. A belongs to the D chord. And so if I put my finger on the F sharp note and just play those two strings, I can often get by with just that. Okay, now I'll play the hymn strumming up to the melody note. I'll have to start on that single C. I'm only going to strum where I've actually written the chords. For the most part, just one strum at the beginning of each measure, but there's a few measures that have two chord changes in them. So I'll start on that single C, strum, catch that A with my index finger. Here's the F sharp. Okay, now I'll play it with the boom chick. When we get to that F sharp note, you've got to play that F sharp quickly followed by the D chord. A little bit tricky there. Okay, now I'm going to play it with the 3-finger pick. I'm going to pinch just where I've written the chords again, wherever the chord changes. I'll have to start on that single C again. Now, as I was playing this, you might have noticed that there was kind of something sounded a little empty on this word stone. Okay, so I put an A minor chord here instead. We want to emphasize that word cornerstone, right? So, Christ is our cornerstone. Oh, is that what you were looking for? Doesn't that really emphasize the word? Yeah, Christ is our cornerstone. The church is not made of bricks. It's made up of people who are built on top of Christ. What a wonderfully strong structure that is. Yeah, I gave you in the notes below, in the last lesson, the very first hymn in the Lutheran hymnal. I threw an A minor chord in there too. That was in the key of C as well. What's going on here? I'll talk about that some more next time. Okay, so you see in this lesson, I've shown you something that's usually optional, not always. If you get an accidental note in the melody, you're going to have to add a 4th chord. Chances are it's going to be this one. Chances are as you're playing along and trying to figure out what the chords are for a certain hymn in the Lutheran hymnal, and it doesn't sound quite right, yet chances are it might be the 4th chord I showed you today. It's often optional, but the most important reason for using it is probably to emphasize the words. Okay, and now about that minor chord I threw in there. Yeah, let's work on that next time. And thank you for watching this time.